And we are back for the second quarter of the Paddock the Goals. So let's set up the play for this quarter. It's wonderful to have with us Sue Rondeau from the award-winning Six Cs. Welcome, Sue.
Thanks, Jo. Lovely to be here.
And also the Chief Executive of Donald's Goodwin Village, Anthony Hogan. Welcome to you.
Hello, Jo.
Thank you for coming along. In collaboration with the Six Cs, the Bullock Shire recently hosted 2 face-to-face community sessions at Witchyproof, also offered online, and Donald. And it was aimed at raising awareness about our shared responsibilities when it comes to emergency management. When we are faced with emergency, there's often a lot to deliver, make quick, informed decisions about. The State Emergency Management Plan identifies those who need to make these certain actions and take these responsibilities. So can you take us through the importance of the State Emergency Management Plan and the priorities which underpin and guide our responses to an emergency?
Absolutely. The State Emergency Management Plan is like the rules of the football game. So we want to make sure that we've got those rules that guide the way that we act and behave during an emergency, same as football. And we have those rules and they're in the State Emergency Management Plan. And it actually lists all the players, which is the emergency responders, it's the community, it's businesses, it's community volunteers. All of those people that play in the space of emergency management have their roles and responsibilities outlined in the State Emergency Management Plan. And there's some really important principles that underpin that plan, and that guides our safe decision making in emergencies. And the first one is the preservation of life. So we want to make sure that when an emergency is happening, that is our number one priority. The second priority is obviously issuing warnings and information to community to make sure that community have an opportunity to make safe decisions, and making those decisions with the most recent and up-to-date information is really, really important. The third priority is critical infrastructure, followed by residential property, economic production and environmental conservation needs. And sometimes during an emergency, we get a bit confused in all of this sort of chaos. But I guess it's really good to know that we do have these priorities for emergency management to help us as a sector make some really good safe decisions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we just want to thank you, Sue, and Matt and your team were very supportive to us as during our October flood event too. So thank you very much for the assistance you provided there. Anthony, can I take you back to that time back in October last year when our Bullock Shire Council team were undertaking a practice drill outside the Goodwin Village? We rolled up there in a whole stack of trucks with all sorts of things piled on the back with a huge team to practice constructing the artificial flood barrier on the Richardson River. This is used, of course, for emergency flood protection due to its ease of installation and removal. What was going through the minds of your residents and yourselves when we were actually going through that? And just take us through your feelings at the time.
Well, the Shire workers had done a good job. The levy itself had been in place since probably 2020 or something like that. So they'd done a few dry runs before the flood, when it was just the river wasn't even up. So they were just making sure that everything fitted together and they had all the pieces. And so in October there was there was water coming over the bridge there. So it was we were interested to see how, we're probably enthusiastic a bit to see how it was all going to work, because we were pretty confident, given the figures, that there wasn't going to be a major flood that would, put our place in jeopardy. But because we did actually have flood waters enter some buildings back in 2011, so we were keen just to see how things would work. So, and it all went pretty well. So the whole, we were very happy with the whole thing, and the water was anywhere near going in the building, and it didn't even really test the levee out that much. So it was, it was quite good, really, and we were excited about it, Jo.
Well, that's really good to hear. And there was certainly a bit of a crowd forming on the wings on that day when we were actually putting that together. So it was lovely actually to have the support of the residents. They had their video cameras out too, capturing the moment of us working to put that together. So it was a wonderful collaborative effort and probably helped instill some confidence perhaps in the community that we were going through through that practice and that we were ready and we understood and they could see it was going to go together well. So lovely to hear that. Over to you, Sue. Your team at the Six Cs have been extraordinary in terms of the amount of experience you have in emergency management, and we really were fortunate to have you assisting us at that time. Can you perhaps reflect upon Anthony's response in terms of the importance of connecting with your communities early on and outline how important it is to know about credible sources of information following on from that they should rely on, and how they can perhaps monitor the situation themselves based on your experiences.
Thanks, Jo. Yeah, it's a great collaboration with the community, council, emergency responders, and anytime you can practice and put into practice some of your mitigation activities, it's always great to have community be a part of that so that they can see what's happening, what's going on, what kind of things, what measures need to be put in place to sort of mitigate those effects of disasters. And erecting that levy as practice was a great way to even for staff to kind of work out that they had all the nuts and bolts in the right place, that they could find all the bits and pieces that they needed, and they did need to actually put it up to prepare for that flood. So that's a great thing to practice. In terms of finding credible sources of information during emergencies, it's really, really, really important because it helps you make those safe decisions. We always recommend having a few multiple sources of information. So we recommend having things like the Vic Emergency app downloaded on your phone, putting the watch zones around so that you can actually get that information really quickly. But there are other ways to get it too, such as the Vic Emergency hotline. So you can phone that hotline as well to ask for advice and be provided with the current information. There's obviously social media accounts of Emergency Management Victoria, plus the response agencies like CFA, SES and things like that. The Bureau of Meteorology is a really great, credible source and it provides those river heights, which are really particularly important during preparation for flooding. And we want to make sure that we're monitoring those things before an emergency so that we can really make safe decisions and make decisions early.
Fantastic. And and it was great to actually have resources there, and we were certainly sharing them as a Shire out with the community. But there was also learning experience to have with that. Anthony, when the awareness level was raised and we started to have our community meetings, was it clear to you who was leading the decision making? And if you had any issues, did you know who to call or to find out for more credible information? What could have perhaps been improved to allay your fears and maybe even some residents' fears?
Yeah, well, we were pretty happy with the information flow. We my take on it was that the Shire were pretty much running the show, but they were getting information from all the sources, the CFA and the police and the North Central Catchment Management Authority. And we had some phone calls from Judy Chapman, who was working at the Shire at the time, and I also spoke to Mark Lyons on the ground because he was organising the mitigation works on site. And Mark was very good and enthusiastic, and he sort of gave me his phone number and said that I could call him anytime, regardless of the hour. So as I said, we were pretty casual about everything because we were looking at the river heights and that ourselves, which we studied in view of the flood we had last time. So we thought we were happy to go through the process, and we learned some things, and that as we said before about you've got theories and plans in place, but until you actually try them out in the heat of battle, you're not really sure how it's all going to work. So I think as a result of that, we learn a few things and we're better prepared for next time.
Fantastic. And it's good to hear that, our team, we have some amazing team members at Bullock, and they certainly were no clock watchers during that event. We were happy to receive some calls late, and some of them were late and very early in the morning, but that's what we do in supporting our community. So it's great to hear that we were able to provide that support to you. It's really important to know what council's role really is, and where it fits in the terms of the plan too, and who's actually really running the show. So can you tell us who does do this during emergency, and what is council's role? And in your experience, what can we do as a community to raise more awareness, such as perhaps attend one of your information sessions, and perhaps how they could provide feedback on how we can improve things in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the emergency management sector runs under a system that's really well organised. Also, looking on it, it seems a bit confusing, but it is actually quite organised, where there is an incident controller in charge of every emergency. So whether it's a small fire, like a bin fire, and the CFA turn out to that fire, there will be an incident controller for that emergency. And it goes right up to those complex multi-agency disasters, such as the flood that happened. There's one incident controller in a footprint. So they look after a certain area within Victoria, and they'll look after all the emergency responders and all the warnings that go out to community, and that they ultimately make all the decisions, and the information then flows down to support agencies such as council. So when council wants to do something, they have to send it up the line to the incident controller, who then approves it or denies it, and seeks more information if they need to, and then they'll either approve that. So in the situation where some levies are being put in to mitigate the flood risk, that information goes from council on the ground. They do all the legwork on the ground, up the chain into the incident controller, and then they actually make those final decisions, and then it comes back down approved or not. So it seems like a convoluted process, but it's actually a way to organise lots of information coming in and having that responsibility in that team and the incident controller making those final decisions based on safety, like those priorities that I just mentioned earlier, to make sure that we're not putting anyone's life at risk as well doing those things.
And of course, Sue, there's within the incident controller group, there's a lot of other agencies in there. Tell us about the other agencies that actually provide additional information. So council is just a support agency. There's actually quite another number of others in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So the incident controller will actually call upon agencies to provide technical advice. So we've got Victoria Police, SES, Ambulance Victoria, St John as well as catchment management authorities. Anybody that can provide that technical advice that they need to help them make important decisions is who they'll call upon in the emergency to provide that technical advice.
Fantastic. And I was actually working in the MOC, as you know, and I was working in communications, and I knew that it was chain of command. And until I was told by the incident controller that I was allowed to release information, I couldn't press the send button. So it's very important to know in our communities that all information and all decisions are made by the incident controller, and we do our best to feed information which the community gives us and provides us, and we work very closely with the community to contribute that information. But certainly when the decisions are made, it comes straight from the incident controller. Anthony, well, that Goodwin Village, every time I look out there, it's becoming its own suburb. It's continually growing and evolving. And tell us about what the village offers there, the facilities, probably some of your longer term aims, the lifestyle you're really trying to build there to maintain a connected community. Tell us about the wonderful things you're doing there.
We've got a 38-place residential aged care building. That's the centrepiece of the village, and it provides residential care to 38 residents, and which it's full at the moment. It's got one respite bed, and every resident's got a private room and a single ensuite. So that's good. It didn't always have that. We've upgraded it over the years so that it's it's got those facilities now at the moment, and it's got quite a few sort of lounge and communal areas too. And then we have 23 retirement independent units, and we've got so that we've got 23 of those, and we're just building a road at the moment so that we can build another 4 of those. And we've also got 10 Office of Housing independent units as well. So they're sort of managed from Swan Hill, the Department of Human Services. So although they're on our land, we don't have anything to do with them. Although we do mow the grass and sort of keep the area tidy around them. But they do actually, ownership of them will eventually revert to Goodwin Village at the expiry of the lease. And we also do community care in clients' homes. And we've got about 15 clients that we sort of broker our care to some of the larger community care providers. And we do the Meals on Wheels for the town. So we cook them at Goodwin Village. So, and then we try, especially with the independent retirement units, we try to, give them a bit of a social program over the time. We have happy hours once a week, and we have morning tea, and we invite them to some of our, we get entertainers in the residential buildings. So from time to time, so we always invite the unit residents over if they wish to come. But a lot of them are still quite active in their own, they've got their own church communities or sports communities or, other senior citizens or planned activity groups or things. So they sort of aren't looking for a lot of support in that area, but we're happy to provide it where it's needed. So just at the moment, we're trying to get an exercise program off the ground to, for example, over the next couple of weeks, where we're trying to see if there's any interest, which we've gauged a bit of interest already. But so they're the sort of things that we're trying to do. But the residential care building is the key to it. I don't think there'd be too many living in the units if they didn't realise that they had a sort of a mothership there to help them, in their times of need. So that's how it all sort of slots together, Joe.
Absolutely fantastic, and you do an amazing job there in maintaining that connected community. I'm actually looking forward to, perhaps we might bring the Paddock goals in. We might set up a bit of a theatre, bring the popcorn and a few Maltesers, maybe a bit of soft drink in the cup, and we might sit down and watch a few reruns of the Paddock the Goals. What do you think?
Well, you never know. It might take off, Joe. It's riveting information, so you just never know.
So it sounds great. Sounds terrific. Well, we'll work on that one. We will. Sue, can you tell us about the cycle of stress? We've talked about this a number of times, but it's really important to keep sort of focusing on it and touching back on it. The simple things we can do to relieve pressures in life that seem to get on top of us at times. And we time and time again at the moment hear about fatigue in our communities, and probably you would hear about that too, Anthony, in the Goodwin homes too, in terms of volunteering. Council's actually hoping to conduct some more of these sessions with the 6 Cs online in the coming months, so people can look out for information in their local paper, council's website, and on social media, or perhaps call into one of the neighbourhood houses to ask when one of those events might be happening too. But tell us a little about the cycle of stress, Sue, and what we can do. And certainly, Anthony, you might want to tag in again about some of your exercise program information.
Yeah, thanks, Jo. It's been awesome running the sessions with you and Bullock, and we've loved every minute of being by your side through this process. But I guess it's a long process, and that's what we wanted to highlight, and we highlight through our sessions that post-disaster, any disaster, it's a really long process for people to come to terms with what happened and maybe move forward, but it's a bit of a bumpy ride for a lot of people, and that includes staff of council, it includes community, businesses, volunteerism always takes a big hit as well. And I think it's really important to realise that people have pressures before an emergency happens. So they have things going on in their lives. They might have health issues, they have mortgage issues, job issues. There's lots of things going on before an emergency happens. And then unfortunately you get hit by a disaster or an emergency and your bucket kind of fills up. So we want to make sure that we're realising that happens to community, and everyone is impacted differently depending on how full their bucket was before the emergency and how full it is after. But realising that the best thing to do is actually have a chat with someone, whether it's your friends or family, listen to what they have to say. If you're not doing the things that you were doing before the emergency, like playing bowls or going out, having walks or going to a movie or reading a book, we need to probably have a think about why we're not doing those things and try and reintroduce those back into our lives, because that actually helps us reduce our stress levels and can help us manage all the other things that happen to our bodies after a disaster as well. So it's really important to find the things that bring us joy and go back and do those things. And obviously get good sleep. We want to have really good healthy meals as well. We want to make sure that we're eating really good food. We want to actually make those small steps that we can to change how we're feeling, and they'll have really big impacts on people's lives. But also remembering that there's really good services and support out there for people as well. So making sure that they can go on to Beyond Blue. You know, there's really great information on some services and websites as well. And remembering too that there's Lifeline is always there. So 13, 11, 14. And making sure that we use those services, have a chat with someone if we do need a hand, and it's absolutely a normal thing after a disaster to need a hand as well.
Fantastic, Sue. And Anthony, you know, you've created a wonderfully connected community in there at Goodwin Village, and probably to some extent, you know, the residents are supporting each other. Is that certainly what you found over the time?
Probably, yeah. With the retirement units, yeah, that's sort of a growing community now, and they're quite active, and like in the residential building, you know, some of the residents are quite frail, so we do, like, there's a lifestyle program where they do, you know, some of the fitter residents keep better connected and everything, but yeah, I think the retirement living unit residents really are social people, and I think that's why they've moved into that community, because they're perhaps looking for a bit of you know, where they may be in a normal town, they'll be in a residential street where people are working all day and they're not around much, whereas, you know, in these communities the people are home most of the time, and so they run into each other quite a bit through the day, and it seems to be what the people are looking for, is that bit of a connectedness.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for certainly providing that in the Donald community. You're doing an amazing job over there. I'd just like to thank yourself and Sue for coming on board today. We really appreciate your time. Stay safe, and thank you very much for contributing to this round of the Paddock the Goals.